Hello, 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 Internet. Welcome back to NoBS News, our second channel. We're doing another live stream. I'm here. I'm your host, Brooks, of course. We're talking about some pretty interesting stuff, something you guys have been asking to talk about for a while now, and it's Breadtube. Breadtube is kind of the name for these far left YouTubers. A lot have been popping up lately, getting a lot of attention, coming after a lot of us. I'm joined by a good old friend of the show. I've got Sean here. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to be back, man. Good to have you back. Yeah, so basically, these guys, I know they made a couple of videos about me over time. I don't really do a lot of responses like that, so I kind of just overlooked it. But now I think it's time we could talk about a lot of stuff, mostly because they've been falling apart, I think. Like, that's kind of the reason I lumped a couple of these characters together. As you could tell by the title, we're going over Vaush, Serfs, and Xander. And these are just like three little popular channels popping up. And I think already from the get go, like they have weird names. Is it just me, or did they always have like odd names?
Right. I don't know what the issue is with the Vaush name. I know that's not his real name. The Serfs is obviously, a reference, but the Xander guy I don't know too much about, but that could be a legit name.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I don't
that could
know.
be on
Like
his
they're just
government
like they
ID.
just look odd to me. Like it's not what I would pick for like a channel name. But it's funny that they all kind of follow this kind of trend of these like Vaush, Surf, Xander. Like they think they're like I don't know, they're trying to be like Greek gods or something. But the thing I was gonna say is like yeah, I feel like straightforward names make more sense. Like I don't know what it is. Like our side, like your name, like actual Justice Warrior, it's like it just makes sense. There's no thinking about it. Like it's obvious and it's catchy. And same with like a NoBS or other channels like we've talked to in the past. But that's besides the point. The names are besides the point. We're gonna jump into basically a lot of recent drama and slash streams. Sean, you've done a couple of debates with the first two of these characters, Vosh and recently Surf. Surf just happened over the weekend. That debate, by the way, just right out the gate, you killed it. It was so much fun to watch. It was so hard to watch at some points, but I got through it and it was like it wasn't you at all. It was just like trying to think what he's thinking. I was just like trying to get through, like because he just nothing really got through to him. So before we jump back to the beginning, what were your initial thoughts on your Surfs debate?
I mean, it was fun. I was prepared for it to be bad because he's like a knockoff discount version of Vaush.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did the call in before where he was just not responding to any of the points that I was making, like he wasn't addressing them. And at the same time, he was like just trying to call me racist, and he was like gloating when I disconnected. Like this is the kind of guy that we're dealing with. I
Yeah.
disconnected mid-sentence and he's like gloating, like I won, I beat you. And it's like, dude, I'm reconnecting and I'm coming back. I hit you
Mm-hmm.
on every single point. I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah, and I think he did. I think he knocked it out, and that's what we're going to get into a little bit today. Some of the like aftermath, some of the follow-ups, and also some of the side stories. Because that's why I wanted to get through the first instance of like Vash, the Vaush guy, because like you said, it kind of comes from him. But what's funny is a lot of ways he's like a copy of Destiny. Destiny was like another channel that I know I had a couple streams with. I don't know if you covered him or not. But yeah, he was the kind of forefather of this movement before it was even Breadtube. And granted, like let's keep in mind, this is like a small kind of niche movement. It's not like very like they have their own hardcore fans, but none of these channels really get past like 100K subscribers. Not to like call numbers and victim or whatever number shame or anything like that, but it's just like a little kind of niche community that gets a lot of attention and they get their guests and stuff and they call out big channels to try to get them to debate them. That's like the main kind of philosophy. And that's kind of what happened to you. Like I kind of saw it happen to you to go to the beginning of this saga. We're like in a three-part Star Wars trilogy. Like the New Hope was when you got like into it with Vosh. Tell me how it happened and like what was the first kind of interaction you had with the Vosh?
Well, I was first with his audience, and his audience kept like commenting like debate Vosh, debate Vosh, debate Vosh. So I didn't know who he was. So I go on his channel and I'm scrolling through, and you'll see the humor in this in a moment. I'm looking for a debate between like somebody on the right just to see how he debates. And I click on his stream with Hunter Avalon, and then I figure out that's not a debate. Like,
Yeah.
Hunter has given in on all these positions to him, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Put that in the back of my mind, leave it alone. And then that whole video comes with the leaving the right video. So I make a response to that. And I notice that there's some things that he's not including that he's saying on stream. So I just cut in clips of Vaush. So
Hmm.
that's really how that whole thing started. Like his audience made me familiar with Hunter, and I did a response to Hunter, and then Vaush was like white knighting Hunter, so to speak.
Right, right. Yeah, I remember a lot of that saga. Like I was right there along with it because, of course, I'm following a lot of the same people. I follow your channel, of course, and I'm seeing this like thing pop up, and I'm just like, geez. And then first it was like a call, and I remember there was like a call onto the stream, and it was like it turned into a debate. But then it was like he didn't like I don't think he ever backed out, but like you were trying to like you had to chase him down or something. Did it seem like that for you?
Well, it was weird because I told him to follow me on Twitter so I could direct message him. So I messaged him and we like worked out the topic, but we didn't have a date. He said he was busy. This is totally fine, by the way. You know, he's a streamer and he's obviously doing debates with like crazy large YouTube channels. So I was like, no big deal. But then he unfollowed me and I couldn't message him. So I just screenshotted it and put it on Twitter and people started shaming him for it. And then he started talking trash, like I was avoiding him and like I should have messaged him on Discord. Like everywhere I didn't message him was where I should have messaged him, which was just annoying because when he finally saw my message on Discord, he was like, "Oh, my bad." And then we worked out a date and it was totally fine. So it was probably more miscommunication than anything. Like once I
Yeah.
did the screenshot, people were calling into his stream and like calling him names and he thought that was for me.
Hmm.
So it was like a giant
I
miscommunication
think
kind
it
of
was
thing.
just way too complicated. Than it was just showed a lack of initiative, and then also the other thing I noticed, and I don't like to focus too much on numbers, but the thing I noticed was there was like a one point we were both in a chat, I think, and like he tried to get me on, like he was like, "Oh, no BS is there, no BS is there," and he was like jumping on that. They were like all trying to send me invites like real quick, and I never said I wanted to debate. Like I just chatted, I think a few things, like whatever, joking or something, and it just seemed like that's the thing that's going on with them. And again, I don't want this to be a diss on you either, but I know the way that they see it. They're like, "Oh, this channel has this many numbers." Like they're looking for people with hundreds of thousands. Like they're looking for 500,000, and
Right.
so for that situation, the way I saw it was just like a clout kind of thing where they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to bother." But your channel is obviously big. Like again, I'm trying to be nice. Like you, I think you get what I mean. Like
Well,
because
when
my
when
channel isn't like any better or worse. It's just they look at the numbers, you know?
no, the numbers make it better. That's scientific fact. No sarcasm there whatsoever.
Yeah.
But we actually at the time that me and Vosh started our interaction, we were like literally at the same subscription base. Obviously, he's like blown up because he can get larger content creators. So I don't think it's necessarily he was like your channel's too small or something like that. Like I don't want to put
Yeah,
that
well,
on.
that was the funniest thing too, because it was like you guys were both at like 70K or something like for a while. I don't know if that's really changed much since then. I think it's been a couple months, but it was like, yeah, the same level, but they're still like reaching higher and just going up to the
Yeah.
skies. Sky's the limit.
Well, it makes sense, but practically, like, you know, if you can get Sargon of Akkad to debate you, then you should do that. Sargon's original channel had almost 1 million subscribers. If you can get Stefan Molyneux, you know, rest his soul because he's banned off of YouTube,
Yeah,
to debate you and off of Twitch
like
and off of Twitter,
Voldemort.
he had
Um,
like 900,000 subscribers. So it makes sense as a business model. In
yeah,
my
yeah.
first debate, I bring up that this is a business model. Remember when everybody on the right was like trying to get, you know, Francesca Ramsey to debate them or,
Hmm.
you know, one of those other people that like nobody talks about anymore to on
Yeah.
to debate them. Like these people are filling that role. They're ironically like some of the better capitalists on the platform.
Yeah, and that the irony there, of course, is they're pushing for communism and they're pushing for just straight up like the farthest left things you could think of. This is like the woke army, and I do have a little clip here. Here's a picture of Vash. He has a ponytail. His name's Ian. He has a girlfriend here. They're in a poly relationship. They have lots of funny clips on here with him. He basically goes over a lot of controversial things. I think this first one is when he got Me Too'd a couple years ago, and that's when he changed his name because he was originally Irish laddie, and now he's this. And then they got Me Too'd, and he admitted he was wrong. He, did something inappropriate. Blah blah blah. Terrible, terrible. And then the worst part, I think, is the anti-Israel stuff, which is really interesting to me because I just found that the most funny and ironic because the claim they always throw at me was, "Oh, I'm racist. I'm a 1940s German." They say this about everyone. I mean, the Nazi word gets thrown around like nothing on these kinds of channels, and it's just funny that they hate Israel so much.
Yeah. And it's like they're almost fellow travelers with the alt-right in that regard. Like if you heard that quote from like an alt-right figure, which it was something like nuke Israel out of existence, like something to that
Yeah,
effect.
yeah,
If
it
you
was
guys can
bad.
find the video clip online, I know I'm paraphrasing, but it was bad and it was said in like serious anger. It
Yeah,
was
and
like
they
Israel.
defend it. They defend
Yeah,
it. Like that's the worst part too, because I brought this up. You know, they have lots of followers that repeat what they say on Twitter and stuff. And you bring up something like that, and instead of like saying like they have the weirdest defense because they don't like say, "Oh, I'm not against Jews, like I'm not racist or whatever. I'm not anti-Semitic." No, their first line is, "Well, Israel doesn't represent all the Jewish people." Like they're like, "Oh, well, you know, they're just separate country. They're not representing the Jewish people." Blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, like maybe there's a technical rightness there, but it's like, dude, it's a country for Jewish people. Like you're just
yeah.
splitting hairs. It's so
It's
obvious.
it's the Jewish state. Like if you ask them about Kurdistan, like when they were trying to film a former Kurdish state, they'll be like fawning over the Kurdish state and angry that the Turks are like trying to bomb that area that would have been the Kurdish state. The same reason the Kurds want a state is why the Jews wanted a state in Israel. It's
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the world isn't particularly safe. Like we're very privileged in the West that minorities are treated incredibly well. Historically, the world has not been safe for minority populations.
For sure, for sure. And that's
But
why that stuff's just so outrageous and it doesn't match up with, their kinds of they kind of feign. They're always all these characters, this Breadtube, it's all about like the wokeness, like kind of virtue signaling, like, oh, I love these minorities. I'm going to protect this group. I'm going to defend them. And a lot of the disagreements and stuff that you got into was having to do with that, like mostly with crime stats. We're talking about usually, the fact that they can't admit that blacks commit more crime, that this or that, they can't judge a case fairly if there's certain races involved. Those are all the big problems. And before we move on, I think we can get to back to Serfs, but let's talk about the Vaush specifics when you talk to him, because I thought one of the funniest things was the one point where he's like, "I'm just gonna assume Sean's right." Like he was just kind of like he didn't have the data in the quote, and I think you might know the section I'm talking about where he was just like, "Do you remember him saying that?"
I need more context to know
Yeah, it
what it.
was basically just like, yeah, he was like, um, trying to combat one of your points, like he was breaking down one of your videos, and
Oh,
he's like, "Oh, I'll just assume he's right here. Like I'll just assume he's right about all this." And it was just like, okay, so you just kind of gave up. You gave up on the whole argument.
yeah, that's in my video. Because after when I called in, I wasn't watching prior to that for very long, and he was going over my healthcare, a point in my healthcare video, or in my video that talked about healthcare, and I explained that single payer healthcare is different from, or like I was explaining that
I'll just
Hunter didn't
assume
know
he's
what
right
single
about
payer
all this.
healthcare was because he was saying that it was like our current system, which it's not. And
Mhm.
then Vaush is like, "Oh, I disagree." So he's going like through this whole Google machine for 15 minutes on his stream to know what the position that he's advocating for actually means. And then at the end of it, he's like, "Oh, I'll just assume that he's right," because he realized that he was wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, I just remember him going that, and he kind of breezed over it, and it was just one of those moments where we're like head turning. We're like, okay, so Sean's right. That's what we all thought.
He spent 15 minutes and he drew a picture to figure out what I was
Yeah,
saying
the
was right.
picture. Oh, dude, the picture was epic, man. Like it wasn't just like the serial killer like ransom note drawing. It was just like showing like in real time, like he doesn't understand the premise.
Yeah.
And that was the main point. I think you might have had a couple of topics, but the healthcare thing was just amazing for that because it just showed these people are pushing it and they don't understand it. They don't understand how it works. They don't understand the system and what they're talking about. And this is stuff that comes up with lots of leftists and people trying to reach for the stars and go for these kind of high and mighty goals. I just made a couple of videos about some similar things. Like Ilhan Omar reminds me of this kind of situation because she was talking about like dismantling the U.S. in her recent quote, And
Yeah.
I was like, do you even know that much about the US? Like, you just got here. Like, I don't know. I think she's been here like 10, 20 years, but it's like these people, like, they act like they know everything. And you're like, no, dude, you're new, or sometimes they're young. Like, I think with the bread tubers, we're talking about people very young and naive and like usually not super educated. Like, again, I don't want to education shame there. We'll get into some of that later with some of the other talks, but they don't have a grasp of these issues.
Yeah, a lot of them. Well, a lot of it is grandstanding, and a lot of it is it's all presentation. And I think some of them like will say this that the most important thing on YouTube is presentation, not information. And it's like that fast talking that you think makes you sound smart.
Yeah,
But if you're actually listening to what they're saying, they're not really communicating any information in that fast talking. Like I could
for
talk really
sure.
fast,
For
go
sure.
over a bunch of topics, but it won't, if I don't have any substance in it, like my audience will reject that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just, that goes back when you say that too. We always talked about how Destiny was gish galloping. You know, he would just do the same kind of thing. It's about talking fast and, you know, saying very little, lots of extra words, and just jumping to next points too, like throwing like 5 points at you and seeing what they can stick with. And I think that's something too. Like, I actually remember some comments on your surf stream. So we can jump to that now. I think we're plenty through with the Vaush stuff because he does the same kind of stuff. He talked fast, you know. He would throw like multiple points in a row in like a string, like just hoping that they all kind of land. And this is actually a great point. So, yeah, we're moving to the Serfs one. This just happened last week. It's fresher in my head, too. And this reminds me, the first thing I want to say out the gate is like you had the most, like, the best performance of the word okay on that stream. It was just like so good. Like, I know it was pissing them off, and it was like I was loving it because you just said okay, and I was like, yeah, okay. It's like this stuff doesn't matter. Like, he would throw these like random lines and studies at you, and you just brush it off with okay, and they would claim like, oh, you're dodging or something. But it's just like, no, that doesn't relate to the issue. Like, we'll get into the specifics, but what is that similar? Am I getting that right? Is that what you were thinking when
Yeah,
you threw
well,
those out?
because he would throw information at me like he thought it was mind blowing,
Hmm.
and it really wasn't. Like he was like, "Oh, I found a study that said that all the differences between the violence in Europe and the violence in the United States of America doesn't come down to just higher per capita gun ownership or higher rates of violent crime." And
Hmm.
I never said that. I'm saying that's the overwhelming majority of the difference between the United States police and the UK police, for example, or any other, Western European country.
Right.
But he thought that was like a devastating point. I'm like, yeah, there's some on the margins that, the police are more violent in general. But remember, he was trying to prove this is a guy who's like, oh, I was moving the goalposts. He was trying to prove a racial bias in police killings.
Yeah.
And he tried to keep broadening that out to that there's some difference between the European police and the American police that cannot be explained just by higher rates of violent crime and per capita gun ownership, which is something I've never said.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
he was definitely moving the goalpost, and in that specific, I think, and this is just the summation, like I would put on the whole debate as far as his approach, it was like racism of the gaps. We know that term well. You know, AIU coined that in a lot of videos. He's explained that many times. So you give him credit there because this is exactly what I saw in that whole debate. Like, back and pedaling it a little bit so we can get the audience involved. Like, Surf's debate was mostly obviously about police brutality stuff, debating cops. It's spurred out of another thing, which we'll get to. But yeah, it's basically like what you just said. He kept pointing to differences and he would assume racism. And it's just like, that's not how you prove racism. You know, you got to actually have facts. Like, you got to have racist evidence. Like, these guys are just so easy to just like say, hey, this group got arrested more in this city, so it's because of racism. And it's like, dude, there's like hundreds of factors involved.
Yeah, it's like if the inputs are different, you can't be surprised that the outputs are different. But what was funny about his points that he brought up is I have a Discord, it's linked under all of my videos,
Hmm.
is I was telling people what he was going to say. Like I had him completely backed into a corner on Mike Brown, so much so that he deleted his original video
Right.
within 12 hours of me posting my response video to it. That's how badly he got obliterated by all of those points.
Yeah.
But I told everybody in my Discord, I'm like, oh, well, what he's going to do is barely acknowledge he was wrong, which is what he did. And he's going to bring up the ticketing in Ferguson as if that has anything to do with Mike Brown. and as if I don't pretend, as if I pretend that there aren't ticketing scandals in departments from time to time.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it was like these random side kind of missions. Like he was bringing up this study, like you said, ticketing. He had some other moment. Like I want to get into the whole thing. Like he tried to debunk race. He said race doesn't exist all of a sudden, which was like really random and funny to
Race,
me and
race doesn't
absurd.
exist, but it was invented by the white
Yeah,
race.
I know. I know. That was one of the low points for him for sure. So, but yeah, let's get to the beginning of the Surf saga because I believe that was when you first made the Mike Brown video and you debunked his Mike Brown video, and it was like you said, like it was just point for point. It was really just so solid, like just effortlessly done like you look like a ballerina like doing a triple axel, and you were like a dolphin in the water just like gliding all over his points. And anyway, no, but yeah, it was just undeniable. Like there was no kind of like gray area by the end of it. I think a lot of his fans were just going after him too, and we saw the tides turn. Like we saw that in your follow-up debates too, in the streams. Like it happened as well. So that's why, yeah, it was just amazing that he took it down so quick because it was just so bad. And I think,
Well, his,
go ahead.
his his audience is dumber than he is. Like his audience wasn't going after it. Like one of the best things I did was put a screenshot of his video in my video because the likes to dislikes were totally in the positive prior to my response being out there. It
Mhm.
got completely torpedoed because my video was devastating, but his audience is stupider than he is by far and away.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he says that he was getting criticism from the left, and you could tell by the likes to dislike bar that that was not the case. So that's like his little backpedal dodge out of this
So he
out of
was overvaluing it to look better, like to look like, okay, I got you, I got
yeah.
you. So yeah, that was the beginning. And the last thing to say about that was like the funniest part of his video was he tried to pull that line like driving while black. You know, he said the guy got pulled over for being black,
Yeah,
but it's just like what's that?
walking while black because
Yeah,
Brown.
walking while black. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, because he repeated that. And it's just such an absurd reference to the situation, like totally ignores pretty much everything that happened.
Yeah, well, Brown is on video minutes before robbing the store. It's indisputable that that was him.
I
And then
know, I know.
when confronted with that, he pulled up that clip from Stranger Fruit. And if you saw my announcement video, I just went through that too because that's total nonsense. It's a
Hmm.
video clip from like 1 o'clock in the morning where Mike Brown
Right.
supposedly had to trade drugs for cigarillos, which, by the way, is not better if you're trying to say Brown is not a criminal. But the store never accepted that trade. What that video actually shows is the motivation for the later robbery, not anything that absolves the later robbery.
Hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing too, this just reminds me on like a general level because I've seen a lot of this lately, especially this year. It's like this obsession with these random arrests, you know, like these are just so it's so odd that so many leftists like this bring them up over and over, make videos about them, you know, defend them and all this stuff. And it's just like this normally would not be that big of news. Like I'm not trying to I don't want to belittle anything that happened. Like I don't want to say, you know, people died, like that sucks, you know, but I'm just saying in general, these are like arrests that would not make national news. But for all the wrong reasons, these kinds of bread tubers and a lot of the mainstream media does this too. They focus in on these cases and then that means we have to debunk them, we have to talk about them, and then they become these big stories where I can't even avoid it. Like I try to avoid stuff before, you know, like sometimes I try to not talk about this or that, but it's like there's certain stories. It's like how do you not talk about what happened in Minneapolis after all this drama?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's already a loss because we're talking about these very niche cases.
yeah,
Like these are the least common cases, the unarmed black person killed by a cop. And we're not even talking about the unarmed black people killed by a cop, which last year was 9. We're talking about the unarmed black people that are killed by white cops.
right,
Like
right.
it's even less of a common thing. I think it's less common to be killed by a cop if you're unarmed and black than being struck by lightning in the United States of America. So it's like it's a total niche anecdote thing that we're trying to say is representative of the country as a whole, which is ridiculous and absurd.
Hmm.
But like once you're going to put these cases forward and you know there's actually information out there to combat the narrative, yeah, I'm going to go through it and I'm going to present things. I'm going to expose the Michael Brown story as being a farce, just like some of these other stories.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's just that's been happening, and I think Michael Brown is significant too because I mean I don't want to say it's the first time it's ever happened, but like in this recent wave, it started the recent wave of like I think Brown was 2014, 2015.
Yeah, he started the black like his thing started the Black Lives
Yeah,
Matter.
yeah, it started BLM, and then now those cases pop up ever so often, usually more so on election year. But that's besides the greater point. Let's get to more specifics. Back to the Serfs thing, and the thing I wanted to mention before we get to the more of the debate is just I kept thinking to myself like what you just said. We're talking about our country. We're talking about crime. We're talking about the politics, what we want to do maybe to make things better, what we like, don't like, and the fact that this is coming from a Canadian. Like, I don't want to be too hard on Canadians. I know I seem like that a lot. People in the audience say, we're pretty hard on Canadians, but how can we not? It's just like they're so hokey and lame. And then in this case, they're just so leftist and so far gone. And on top of that, they're like nosy neighbors. It's like you have this neighbor in your neighborhood who's always like looking over your fence, like, what are you doing? You having a party? Are you sure that's garage is up to code? They're like, why are they so focused on our America stuff?
I mean, because their country's not that like it's not that interesting. I'm sure their local politics can get interesting, but overall, like America is a dominant force in world culture. So they're just observing, their southern neighbor. But it is weird. Like we don't look at Mexican politics,
Yeah, or Canada. Yeah.
yeah, or even Canadian. Like we make fun of Trudeau every now and again, but we're not like up to date on the Canadian politics. It is interesting for like foreign people to be advocating, like they're not even residents, for like how our country should deal with policing. Like it is.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I'm getting at too. And it's like the worst part is like it hardly ever comes up. It's almost like they pretend they're not Canadian. They just like talk about it and like get in on it. And I don't want to get all like hello fellow Americans kind of on this thing, but it does seem like that sometimes because they're just like proposing some of the most radical stuff. And if it was me, like, if I talked about other countries sometimes, like I do sometimes, but I hardly make like sweeping suggestions. Like the most I'll say is like, oh, maybe London should elect a new mayor. Maybe they should vote out Trudeau in Canada. But like if I were to suggest some of these kinds of things, these like radical kinds of moves in like the government, I would definitely like preface it more. I would be like, hey, I know I'm not from your country. Like I know I'm not Australian, but if I were you guys, I would change this a little bit. But we never get that from Canadians like the Serfs.
We only cover foreign countries' politics when it's like an international story. They follow like the domestic politics, and it's really obnoxious. And it's not just obnoxious from Canadians. Like, let me throw shade at people from California to see people that don't live in New York telling me what the NYPD's police budget should be. Like, I'm the person who has to live in a city that they're proposing cutting 1/6 of the police budget out of it for no reason. So, like,
yeah, it
like,
works within the U.S. too. It totally does. Like, it's like you got to have a little bit more, just be more humble about it. Like, don't tell other towns and states what to do. And that's the kind of vibe I got from this debate. Because it was just like so bad. Like, oh, America's so bad. We're so racist. Like everything's racism the whole time. Like that was basically his arguments. Like lots of things trying to show racism. But back to the specifics, getting through the whole discussion
I
you had.
caught him a couple of times in the debate where he was saying we, and I'm like, what's all this we stuff? You're Canadian. There's no we.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing I was getting at too. It's like I don't know, that could just easily be accidental, but it just shows how their thinking is. Like they think they're acting like they're in the same boat, but really they're like an outsider, kind of making radical suggestions. And for me, at least in the present, I think a lot of recent events have made Americans more paranoid about stuff. Like we've had a lot of foreign influence and meddling, so it's like when you see people like Serfs, or back another reference from earlier is Ilhan Omar is from another continent. You've got other people from all these other places, and they're coming here and they're complaining about it, and they're like, oh, we want to take down America, or we want to like remove all cops. And it's like, dude, you're not even here. You've been here for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, Omar's a little different. Obviously, she's a U.S. congressperson, but it is weird that she's like, it's a racist, cruel system. It's like, dude, this is the system that rescued you from Kenya. Like, she was in a Kenyan refugee camp. She was a Somalian refugee. Like we brought her here, and then she's propped up as a congresswoman. We even let her marry her brother. Like America has been super kind here,
No, I
but
know she's done great, and it's like when you go from Africa to congresswoman in America, like she basically landed on the moon. You know, like she freaking went as high as she could possibly go, and she's still complaining, and now she wants to shut down our country and like totally reshape it.
I will say, like, obviously this isn't a hard and fast rule. There are plenty of Canadians that work for like the Blaze TV. Crowder, I think he immigrated to the US and became an American citizen.
Right.
Gavin McGinnis too, he's from Canada. Like a bunch of people that are in American politics are Canadian, but like they either work for American companies or, they're
Those seem more humble to me too. I know that you're talking about it, and I know there's other ones. There's definitely good ones out there. That's worth noting for sure. And I know we have like a few friends out there. Like I don't hate all Canadians. Like I like a lot of Canadians actually, but we don't always have the time to talk about the things we like. People want to complain more, and we want to bat down the bad ideas. So that is definitely worth pointing out. And before we move on, thank you for the 100 people tuning in. That's really awesome. I appreciate you guys chatting it up over there. I'm gonna read some comments later. If you have any super chats, they're much appreciated, but not required, of course. Show will always be free. So we're talking about this stuff, and I see Mestizo, Kentucky, Jay, Mobamba, Tim Allen in the house. Love that comedian. Good guy. Good stuff. But yeah, back to the stuff, and what I wanted to point out is too, like we're back to the group. Like we had a couple of these. I think we talked about like four different bread tubers today, and they're just all so similar to me. Like besides like one of them, I think only one is from Canada, but the rest are like these like American white guys, like really pale white guys. Like I'm white too. Like I'm not hating on that, but I'm just saying it's like these guys are the palest ones of all time, and they tend to wear like just weird. I don't know. It doesn't matter how they look, but there's a lot of similarities, not just their names, not just their beliefs. And I think what's worth pointing out now is like we have more diversity on our side.
right. Oh, from Breadtube for sure.
You know,
Like,
like they talk about a lot of diversity. They hate white people. They say we have white guilt, white privilege, or actually we call it white guilt. They say we have white privilege. And
right.
yeah, it's like, dude, I have like all kinds of people on my show. These guys are all straight up like white dudes, like just like the whitest
And
dudes of
rich
all.
white dudes. A lot of them come from money.
Yeah, real rich. Like we were talking about that I think pre-show, like where it's like Vaush has rich parents in Beverly Hills. The third guy we're gonna talk about, Xander, he lives in like this gated community in Florida or something. He's got like rich ass parents. I'm not sure about Serfs specifically, but I could see it. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. There's no signs that he I don't know, he probably lives with his parents too. I think a lot of them live with their parents. They're rich. They never went out in the real world, had a job. Most of them are uneducated, and that's just the kind of like ongoing trend.
Right. Well, yeah, and like a lot of it is guilt. Like a lot of the reason why there's like the limousine, they call them limousine liberals or champagne socialists, is out of guilt. So that's like what we're seeing. Like they feel like because they grew up in a context where they didn't have to earn anything to live in luxury, that nobody who lives in luxury earned their station in life. And like you can see that reflected even in like nepotism cases, like Cenk's nephew. Like he's a
Yeah.
super communist because he knows that he got his start and he was on the Young Turks that promoted because his uncle founded the company. So like you see that very, like that insecure mentality manifests with a lot of these creators. And a lot of them are
Yeah.
just emulating other creators. Like we talk about the similarities. Like people don't realize how similar these creators actually are. Like their responses to me include like the same insults, like
Hmm.
the same like joke about like a fake award that I have behind my desk. It was made for me as a birthday gift. Like I put it behind my desk because I think it's nice. I never passed it off as a real award, but every
Just a
single one of these
joke.
red
Yeah,
tubers,
it's just a
one
joke.
by one, point that out. And they're like, "Oh, a fake award. Oh my god." They're like, "It doesn't even look real." It's like, "Yeah, it's handmade." Like
Yeah,
it
I
looks
know. I
really
saw it.
cheap.
I remember when you added it. It's just like a funny gag having a background, and they're trying to goof on it. And yeah, that's a great point because I almost at first I thought you were going to say they repeat points, which I'm sure they do too. But to like repeat a goof, a attempted goof, it's
Yeah.
just showing how unoriginal they are. And that's another thing too. Like they think they're the smartest and the like the most unique. They think they're the first time they've ever done this, but it's like, yeah, they're just copies of each other. Like Vaush copied Destiny, Serfs copied Vaush, Xander copied this one. Like they're all carbon copies, and I think it shows in their the other things I thought of when you said this. First of all, you totally pegged them. Like the explanation for their rich upbringing is totally spot on. That like it's not just a coincidence. You know, it's like totally related. Like they feel guilty about coming up in a good place. But in addition to the similarities part, it's like, yeah, they all film their videos like almost the same way in like Twitch stream styles. And then they all have similar thumbnails. Like I noticed like a lot of them have like the same artist, probably, like at least the same, like they have their little character that's drawn in the same way.
Yeah, their videos are made to be, from the thumbnail, almost indistinguishable from their other creators. And by the way, it wasn't even just the play button joke. When they respond to Devin, atheism is unstoppable,
Mhm.
they all make a point about his avatar blinking in his video. It's like, they're like, oh, it blinks. It's so weird. As if that A, isn't production value, and B, is some like unique, devastating point. And I've seen these people respond to him, and it's like 4 for 4. They brought up the
Mhm.
play button and they brought up the blinking kangaroo eyes. It's like, they're clearly watching each other's stuff and they're just plagiarizing each other, and it's so obvious.
It's so awkward. It's like I've had that I was gonna say, like, I've never done that on purpose. Like, there were a couple times I thought about saying something, but if it came to me, like, I would stop. You know, I'm like, okay, someone already said this. Like, sometimes I'll just won't even cover like a video or a topic if someone else did it already a bunch of times. You know, like I'm not like I think that's the natural kind of way like a real creator, producer, artist might think. But these guys are just going carbon copy, and it's just so obvious. And I think it goes to their kinds of I want to say low IQ because they're thinking they could get away with this, or they just can't think of anything else to say. Um, the other thing I was going to mention is just the other similarity is their videos are all super long. Like they always make like hour-long videos.
Yeah, or even longer, because they're all streams, to generate that super chat revenue.
Yeah.
And most of it is just mindless nonsense. That's why I got criticized by Vaush for not including more clips in my response, and it's like, dude, I have to download a 6-hour video from you to cut out the clips that I wanted. In my first video about him, I went through and did that. It just takes extra time, and it's just, at a certain point, it's not worth
Yeah,
my
it's
time to do that.
insane. No, I
And
know. It's like
and people get the point. It's not like they pretend like, oh, there's like no clip, therefore no point. And it's like, yeah, you spend 45 minutes going over a 2-minute Twitter video. Like, I'm trying to consolidate this into, an under 20-minute package.
yeah, of course. And that's another that's there are similarities like that on our side too. Like I think our video length might seem like similar like but that's just kind of like I think that's just a standard on YouTube almost. It's like most people make videos that are 10 or 15 minutes. Like
Yeah.
besides like a few other groups of like short videos, like music videos, or some people have like the 1 minute videos, like whatever. There's a few of those, but we're just like more in the like yeah, I always want to make my videos shorter. This is just like basic video editing 101. You know, it's like creator content, like basics. Like, and that's the thing that I don't think they get. Like, and I think another part of it too is with the videos that are long, um, it's like they sniff their own farts too much. You know, it's like they can't edit themselves because they think everything they say is so important. And it's just like, dude, get to the point.
Yeah. Well, it's that streamer mentality. Like, there's a lower barrier to entry for Twitch, or like there's lower standards for Twitch, or of what's watchable on Twitch,
Yeah.
because people can just do the just chatting for hours on end and not do anything creative. That's not to say that there aren't creative people that have moved over to Twitch. Devin got banned from YouTube. Great guy. He's on Twitch. Go check Devin
Yeah,
Tracy.
there's plenty of good ones, but I noticed that too. That was the first one of the first things I noticed coming across Destiny like 3 years ago, and it was like, how do you watch this show? Because like half the time they're not even talking, and they're just like, what? Oh, haha. Ha. You know, it's like just like the most boring kind of show ever.
Yeah,
And
it,
yeah,
it it invites like those crazy fans too, because the people that actually watch that are dedicated diehards. Like, if you have 6 hours to spend with somebody, then you're like committed to the cause.
yeah, and it's like that's how they get into their heads too. It's almost like indoctrinating kind of thing. Because if you can listen to someone and you're watching them like hours and hours a day, I mean that's a whole other thing. Like people that watch our videos or whatever kind of videos, like Red Letter Media or some movie reviews or gaming, like some of them will do long stuff once in a while, but like to do hours and hours each day and like to watch that stuff, it's like then you got to think the next step is like what kind of people are watching this, like who has the time, you know?
Well, it's also like a shield because if you put out a 6-hour stream and like you say something really bad during that stream, like most people aren't going to find out about it. If I have something like horrific in a video that's 15 minutes long, like, a lot of people are going to see that video and pull out that clip. If it's on a live stream and there's only, 3,000 people watching live, which is really big, by the way, for like YouTube or Twitch.
Yeah, that's good.
Like I'm not downplaying it, but there's just less activity that's going to make that, happen. Like you have to have active haters to be trolling your stream. And that's why whenever you interact with any of these people, their audience just like, goes spastic because they're just 15-year-olds that don't have a job or anything to do. Like I talk to the people in my audience in my Discord and they have like work, like they have families.
I know. Yeah. I know the people that message me, like that watch or whatever, like I actually just got a message from like a law enforcement family, like that was happy about a video. Like we support them, we're one of the few channels that isn't like all anti-cop, like all this crap we're talking about. Anyway, like, like a cop isn't going to be able to have time for that. Like someone working whichever job, like working at a train station or something, it's like any job, like really, that's the thing. Like we're just talking about people that don't work, who have never worked, who have no like life experience. And yeah, and I think that gets to the almost to our third character, to the Xander guy. But let's finish up with Serfs because I think there was a few more things we didn't get to.
Oh yeah.
Because the main thing I think we'll go back for a minute is like the whole thing was racism of the gaps for 2 hours. Like that's the way I saw it really, because that's the reason you had to kind of say okay a bunch of times because he threw so many like random studies at you that really didn't prove all this racism. Like the thing, like I was almost yelling at my screen at one point, like watching the debate. I'm like, dude, prove racism. Like you can't just say there's differences and then that proves racism. There was even one time the guy said it too. Like he said it like in a way that made him sound so bad because he was like, he pointed out.
He said equality of outcome at one point, and it was like that would be like the measure of not racism or something like that. Like it was definitely stated quickly and retracted immediately.
Yeah, he also said that reminds me of another one. He was like, put the horse before the cart at one point, and it's just like, yeah, exactly. That's how it's supposed to go. But yeah,
he would accuse me. Every time I had him dead to rights on a point, he'd be like, "This isn't the gotcha you think it is." And I'd watch some of his reaction in the video, and like that nervous, can't make eye contact with the camera, like shaking, like clearly by his body language, it was in fact the gotcha that he knows it is. But it was also like he would accuse me of moving the goalposts as he was consistently moving the goalposts. Like I would say that police presence does deter crime. And if you want to get more specific, yeah, obviously certain crimes are going to be deterred. Certain crimes that, take place predominantly inside probably won't be deterred by the cops being outside in the area. But he was like, well, actually, the police aren't very good at solving crimes, which is already moving the goalpost because I was talking about deterring crimes from happening. And he's like, according to this random survey that I don't have any links to send you, the police only charge or convict 7% of rapists. And it's like, first of all, the police neither charge nor convict anybody. They refer cases to the district attorney for charges. And second of all, I saw that in an Instagram meme a week before the debate, and I had already researched it and debunked it. That's why I didn't have to pull anything up to shred his point. His numbers were nowhere near accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with the cop thing, it was just like you said, like a goalpost move, like, oh, they don't solve a lot of crimes. And then the first step was just like, dude, how could you say cop presence isn't going to lower crime? It's just like the most absurd thing ever. It's so common sense. I mean, it's proven too. I know the data's out there as well, but it's just like to someone that puts that point out there, it says a lot. It's like you really think putting a bunch of cops in a neighborhood is going to make it less safe?
Yeah, and it was in the John Oliver thing where he was saying the Camden Police Department was defunded. No, it wasn't. The reason they changed the Camden Police Department is because they couldn't put more than 12 officers on the beat at night. So they destroyed the department, reconstituted the Camden Metro Police that are controlled by the state, and then allowed them to put more cops on patrol, and crime dropped. All these violent crimes dropped because you could actually have cops out there. So of course it can deter, disperse, and reduce crime. It just depends on how you use your resources.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the other implication is just that you come from their mindset of just like they think more cops are going to make more problems. They think more cops are going to hurt more people, and it's just that's just a misrepresentation. Like you're not thinking clearly. Like obviously the people get hurt. Like cops make mistakes. They're humans. Like we know that bad things happen, but it's not on just random people. Like we're not just going to go cap someone. They're not just going to go, rough someone up totally and unprovoked. Like there's things that lead to where they happen. It's just
Yeah.
the idea that that's just not a thing. It's just so absurd. And then the other thing I wanted to say about the gaps one is just there was one point where he quickly said something and then kind of let it go. Like you mentioned with another line where he says something like, doesn't that, like, what else would that be? That's racism. That's what else would it be? And like that was just the perfect kind of failing moment because it showed that's how he thinks. Like he thinks these gaps. He's like, what else would it be? Like, oh, I can't even think of anything else. And I'm like, well, actually, I could think of like 20 different things it could be.
Yeah,
Like just because you go to racism, like I could say, well, I think it's because they are all not eating the right food. I think it's because these people,
well,
whatever.
it's very paternalistic. It's paternalistic racism. It could never be that these group of people with worse outcomes on average are making worse decisions on average. It can never be that. They can never have the same agency as they would grant to white people. It's actually amazing because when I was having the conversation with Vaush, and you get the same kind of vibes from the surf guy, they depict white people with like some hyper agency. Like they have so much agency they can override what minorities like think and will, and they basically treat them like minorities like children or like dogs. Like they have no decision making power. Like white people determine everything for them, and it's insane. It's incredibly paternalistic, and it's horrifically racist, ironically.
No, I know, and that's going back to another thing, like we were talking about earlier when you said, they have this kind of cushy lifestyle. They're born rich. They feel like they're privileged, and I think a lot of that comes from it too, since they're so like whatever. Their parents are rich, and they've always been handed everything. They start to think like they don't know that. They start to think it's because they're white in their mind. They have this whole progress going and they're like, oh, it's because I'm white and then I have all this agency. And then so it's like they act like we're some kind of like white supremacist or something, but that's actually almost like a white supremacist argument.
Yeah, they're literally proposing white supremacy. If you think white people are so omnipotent that they can control the actions of minorities down to the individual minorities not being at fault for anything that they do, you're a white supremacist. Like that's the ironic thing about Vaush, Serfs, and all these regressives is that they deny agency so much to these people that they're more white supremacists than even people on the alt-right that are actively trying to be that person. It's crazy.
I know. They take it so far, and then they're basically becoming the thing they hate because there's a lot of I know that's kind of like a plain meme. Like they'll say, "Oh, you're the real racist," like as if it's like a played out term now, but it's just because it's a lot of times true. Like this is what the real racists do. Like they have excuses, they have reasons to explain their racism, and that's what the left does. Like they have these things that go back to different things in the past, or they try to baby a certain race and then, vilify another race. And it just goes to show that they're definitely the real racist. And that's why that term, it's probably why they're trying to get that term iced, is because it's so true,
Well, it's like if you hold the position that if a black person fails, it's the fault of a white person. But if a black person succeeds, then that's because white people let them succeed to trick other black people into thinking that they can succeed in the system and their failures on their own. Like they do the same thing with the model minority. They're like, oh, Asians only succeed because white people like specifically set it up for Asians to succeed so that they could show black people that the system isn't rigged. It's like, yeah, if you believe that they have omnipotent power, you're the white supremacist.
I
you're
know.
attributing godlike abilities to one racial group of people who happen to be white. That makes you a white supremacist by definition.
Right. And it's just, it goes along with a lot of these other bad things on the left, like the kinds of ways they're going towards segregation now, like these old things that they call racist. And it's like, oh, now let's segregate again. Let's, separate these races and, I saw a recent story, like some school district is letting the minorities go back to school before the white kids. And like, I think it was in Washington, of course, you know how crappy that. I think that's the same state that had the mask law too. It was like, everyone has to wear masks except for minorities. And you're
Yeah,
just
that was
like,
Lincoln. That was Lincoln, Washington, and then they removed it there, but more municipalities were like, "That's a good idea. Racially discriminatory laws. Let's add it to other people." And the crazy thing about that is not having a mask makes you more likely to expose other people. So this policy that's designed to help them by making them feel better actually creates more danger for the people that they're around,
yeah,
which are
it's crazy.
typically minorities.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and it just shows how far we've come in this crazy election year. There is another thing or two I think on the Serfs one I wanted to bring up. I want to get to his ending statement eventually, which is really really cringe. But before we do, there was a part where he brings up slavery. He does the slavery like reparations argument, the fact that these ancestors disenfranchised the blacks in the present, this whole blah 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 thing, and it was just so typical and so like bad. I don't get how anyone could still push that argument.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
he mentions it. He's like, "Oh, they had Jim Crow and 250 years of slavery and this and that," and it's like, and then I just shot right back at him with Thomas Sowell's research that post the Civil War and prior to the 60s, black people were going into the middle class. Like this is why what these people say is like so offensive and so paternalistic, is because even under unambiguous discriminatory systems, like black people were improving their own station in their life because they had strong communities, like strong families and all this stuff. So the idea that they cannot improve themselves now versus then is ridiculous, and it's insanely paternalistic, and people should be shamed for saying the kind of things that these regressive leftists say because
mhm.
it's provably not true under objectively harsher circumstances.
Yeah, I know. And it's the other thing that's really messed up. I hate to admit this. I got to be careful, but like the thing this come up in the public too. This a lot of this stuff, these topics do relate to mainstream news as well. So I think that's pretty interesting now that we're getting into it. And this reminds me of the recent talk about slavery in relation to America, and like it came up because of 4th of July, and there was all this talk about like CNN said President Trump is standing in front of two slave owners at the Mount Rushmore, and they're talking about Washington and Jefferson, and I'm like, dude, are you seriously gonna call these guys slave owners? Like, are you serious? Like, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm not saying they didn't have a farm in the South or something like that. Like, they had multiple properties and all that stuff. I'm not defending slavery either. That's the trick here. The thing that's really tricky about this is, and I'm gonna say it because I think it's fun, but it's not. Don't take it the wrong way. But when you point out Washington and Jefferson and you like say, oh, they're slaveholders, it's like, what that makes me think a little bit? Like, I almost want to say, was it really that bad then? Like if you're going to point it out like that, it's like, is it really like, because we're talking about Washington and Jefferson, like, is it really that bad if you're going to go after them? Obviously
Well,
it was. That's a
it,
joke. I'm not
it,
trying to stand behind that, but it's
yeah,
just a funny way to think of it because I'm just like, if you go after it so hard, it's like, you kind of like let's give Washington and Jefferson some credit, dude. They like founded the best country in the world.
right. Well, we don't have statues of them because they were slave owners. Yes, it's
Yeah.
bad, it's immoral, but in the context that they lived in, that was the norm, and not just in the colonies, but everywhere in the world. And the West was quicker to end slavery than anywhere else in the world. So, like, we're not building, in the context of people in that era, like their ownership of people was, something that rich people did. Especially, I think Jefferson's from Virginia, and I forget which state Washington
Hmm.
called his home. But like that's not uncommon for wealthier people to do. And I think Washington inherited his through his wife. And both of these people freed their slaves when they died, which is the only legal way to do it in the state of Virginia.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously it's bad, it's immoral, it's a corrupt system, but it was the norm worldwide up until the English, and this was years after the founding of this country, decided that it was immoral, and they were going to go around the world abolishing slavery in all the English colonies. America wasn't a colony at that point, but we had it in under our current constitution for like something like 75 years, I think. The Constitution was ratified in 1789. So like we didn't even have it that long in the history of this nation. It obviously predates this nation, and as a world institution, it goes back thousands upon thousands of years. Every major religious text has rules for treating your slaves. That's how common it was back when those texts were written. So yeah,
no, it's obvious. Like, obviously, it's wrong. Like, I think that's just an absurdist kind of joke reference to it. Like, obviously, I wouldn't stand behind that, but it just makes you think. It's just like they're just trying to tear down this history and then also tear down America, and that's the way I see. Like, back to the debates and the Breadtube arguments, it's a lot of that too, because their arguments are all the same. It's like cops are all racist. Americans are inherently racist because we're white and we're white supremacists. And on top of that, they bring up slavery whenever they can because, it's like, oh, that's America's original sin. Like, let's throw the slavery at them. But like you were just saying, like, obviously it's historical. It doesn't make it right. It's just that there's different things in our past that were changed. One day in the future, we could all look back to this time and say, hey, I can't believe everyone was using those phones made in China that were little kids were building them in sweatshops. Like, you guys are all racist. Everyone in America was racist in 2020. And, like, that's the way the history goes. It's like things change, but it's hard to hold, it's like if you're more honest about things, you don't hold it against like the person in the past with the present mindset, which is what they want to do. It's like a lot of time traveling,
Yeah, well, it's you blur the lines between past, present, and future, or not future, but between the past and the present to draw parallels, skipping everything relevant and different and that changed in between. But it's also again a very like Western centered view of world history. The idea, like you had a senator, Tim Kaine, who was Hillary Clinton's VP pick, say that America didn't inherit slavery; it invented it, which is objectively false. It predated even the Declaration of Independence, which is what we honor when we say the founding of America on the 4th of July. But the Constitution wasn't ratified for 13 more years after the Declaration of Independence. Like, it's just it's ahistoric nonsense. It's inaccurate. And if you look at the Arab slave trade, for example, that went on for 1,000 years before the concept of America or anybody even landed on North America, and nobody talks about it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's slavery right now. There's places. Sorry, what was that?
I was saying there's still slavery right now in Islamic countries and African countries. Like,
yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying at the same time. Yeah, I was like, I've talked about that. The one that burns me the most is the stuff like with Al Jazeera, and they have AJ Plus, and then there's their Francesca chick who's always bashing on America. And I'm like, I actually razzed her at 4th of July because of this. She was tweeting on 4th of July. She was crapping on America. And she posted some video about why we're not the best. Like, it was like a little low key. Like, she kind of was ironic about it. But basically, I was like, I tweeted her and I'm like, why would you hate on someone on their birthday? Like, who does that? Like, that's like the worst thing you could do. And that's what she was doing. She ended up deleting her original tweet, but then she just like reposted it. I think whatever, because it might have been because of what I said or just what, typo or something. But the point is, yeah, I called her on this Qatar stuff because she works for Qatar, and I'm like, why would you move to America? Because this is another foreign national. Like, this is another person who moved from another country.
Are you talking about Fiorentini or Ramsey?
Yeah. Sorry, Francesca Fiorentini. I know there's two Francescas, but Ramsey's been out of the loop forever. Francesca Fiorentini sometimes still makes whatever and has tweets and stuff. And that's why I was saying, I was like, yeah, she moved here from South America, and now all she does is crap on this country and try to change everything from the ground up and like say we're all racist and all this stuff. And I'm like, why don't you move to Qatar then? Like, your employers are in Qatar, move there. And if you think it's so much better there, like why don't you acknowledge that you're using slaves right now to build these soccer stadiums for like FIFA or whatever it is, like the World Cup or something.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because in Qatar, it's well known, it's government policy that you get tricked there into thinking you're going to make more money as a migrant worker. And when you get there, your employer takes your passport and you can't leave the country without their permission. And they can trade your passport to other employers for money. It's like literally slavery. And we ignore it. Libya, like you can watch HD auctions of slaves on the internet in Libya from last week if you wanted to, but we're supposed to talk about the sketches of what this looked like back in the, 16,
Yeah.
1700s. Like it's
Yeah, I know. It's insane. And it's just a stupid topic, and it's just not examined right ever. But we can move on because I think the last thing I want to mention, do you want to talk about lead?
or do you want to what I thought you were going to say trans rights.
Trans rights matter. Yeah, that's the ending thing. He had the worst ending because it was like, I think I'll actually play it. I'm sure you've seen it before. Let me give the group a taste of this.
I'll be totally frank. I don't understand how you, as a person, have such a combination of being condescending and sounding as if you were confident on these issues when you come across as just a human cherub. I have brought nothing but information in terms of stats, statistics.
So he reads a script. I'm about halfway through it. I think you've seen this clip before. Like it's just so funny to me, like because he after the debate he goes and posts the last minute of the debate. He skips everything and just
Well,
posts his ending that he had scripted.
the second last minute of the debate, because I was a little too clever for him, because he asked me, he's like, I think it would be better if we do closing
I
statements and
know.
you don't interrupt me and I don't interrupt you. And I've seen these grandstanding videos before. So I was like, yeah, sure, you go first, which completely nerfs
I
what he
heard.
do.
Yeah, and I heard him like stutter when you said that. You're like, he's like, you want me to go first? And you like hit him with it, and I could tell he wasn't like exactly ready. But yeah, the funniest part about that was he didn't let you have a final statement. He cut you off.
And he specifically said, we don't mute each other, we don't interrupt
I
each other.
know. What a
But
freaking what a snake, man. It's like you can't trust these people. And then also, for the record, I know I don't think you could see the image right now, but he has the fascist haircut. He has like the most fashy haircut I've ever seen. And I don't know, that's just random. But the other thing is like he's reading this script and it's just like it's so bad and it doesn't really have anything to do with what happened. Like first of all, he threw a lot of random studies at you, but he never proved racism. He never proved institutional racism. Like he didn't, defend his whatever Mike Brown video. He totally caved on that. He caved, he didn't cave on anything else really. Because I mean, the best you could get was him deleting his video. That's a basic admission. Like he wouldn't really say it properly, but it was just crazy that he acted like he won. And then the other thing, before we listen to the rest, it's like he called you a cherub. Like I don't know, is that a bad thing? Like I thought cherubs were like little angels. Isn't that like a good thing?
oh, he said I look like that, and he also said I was confident, which is another thing that Vaush has commented on. Like that's a bad
I
thing.
know, like you're like confident. I saw that too. I'm like, yeah, I mean he knows his shit. Like obviously, like you were speaking with authority, and I think that's what scares them. And honestly, that was the other thing I was getting towards earlier was that's why they didn't want to debate you too, is because like for me, like I'm more of a goofball and like I'm not as super focused on like all these facts, but you like have it down so pat, like you just can kind like they're just scared of you, like they know, like, and I'm not trying to kiss your ass too much, but it's just like it's true. It's like they see this good debater in the horizon and they just kind of like steer away, like when they know they're trying to go for like low hanging fruit.
Well, that's why they jump from topic to topic every time you try to get them pinned down on something. And you could see the nervous energy as he's reading this. And
Hmm.
by the way, you could also see I'm just wearing a random T-shirt that I threw on 5 minutes before the debate. And
Inspector
this guy,
Space Time.
Caesar, like this was a big moment for him. I didn't even see him because he refused to turn his web camera on for my stream. I
Mhm.
didn't even see him throughout the whole course of that. I didn't notice that until after the fact. But yeah, like my spontaneous rebuttal that he had to mute like 2 or 3 times to his prepared statement that had information that we corrected throughout, like what my qualifications are. For some reason, these idiots don't know the difference between criminal justice and criminology.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
since that was written down in the script, he went with criminology, which is not my specialty whatsoever, and I've never claimed it to be. And you just see him, he's not making it's like this bold statement that he's trying to say all tough and everything, but he's like reading through it
No,
and
I
nervous
know. Yeah.
out.
He looks like a kid like wearing his dad's suit and pretending he's going to work like his dad. Like he's LARPing. They're like LARPers, and like yeah, this seems like such a big moment for him. Like, oh my God, like, you know, he got himself a fresh haircut, a blazer. He had this speech prepared. And it was just like so funny because it's like he threw these facts at you. But yeah, like we said, like he never proved anything different. Like that's why you had to just say okay a bunch of times because it's like, you know, let's get through this. Like, do you have anything that actually proves your point? But it just didn't seem like he did.
Yeah, well, he's a headline reader. He had a lot of headlines put forward, and it wasn't that I was just saying okay, as I would say okay, make your point, because he would state
Yeah.
the stat like from the headline, and not I'm like, and like continue, like make an argument that I can
Yeah,
argue.
no, you were leading it for sure. And yeah, I wasn't trying, like I said, the okay moves were like totally classic. That's why I liked it. And it was just like, yeah, get to the point. Like where are you proving me wrong? You know, that's what you're saying. You said a lot. You transmitted a lot with those okays. Like you had like a picture worth 1,000 words.
Yeah,
So
because I was like, okay, like what's the follow? Because the thing is these people are grandstanders. He didn't know what my positions were, so he would say things that he thought were like gonna blow me away, as if any of the counter arguments he actually made weren't things that I've heard a million times, and
mhm.
things that I could just guess that he was going to bring up, and B, like some of the stuff that he would bring up were just like, points in the statistics that I don't disagree with, but he was just trying to present them as something that they weren't.
Yeah, I know. It was like there were stuff like yeah, we I agreed with it too. Like there were facts, like he brought up statements, but it didn't prove anything like wrong. Like it wasn't proving like you know, I don't know what like the main premise he was going for. Like I think it was just like cops are racist or something. You know, like it just seemed like he was proving like a vague like systemic racism argument that never came to be.
He would say, and this is like, I'm going to be vaguely complimentary to a Vaush, but it's in comparison. He would say, I presented you with all this data and information. And I just pointed out, I'm like, no, you didn't, dude. Like, if I needed to pull something up, I put it up on screen. Like, I did that a couple of times during the debate. He didn't present me with anything. He just read a headline and said, this was what the study showed. And if I was familiar with it, I would refute it with stuff that I'd seen. Like, there was that thing that he was basically quoting from the same data that some Instagram meme quoted about like sex crimes in the US. But like he wasn't presenting me with anything. It wasn't like honest in any way. Anytime that I would talk about data or sources, I would either show it on screen or name where it was from. And I would call him out for not using the most accurate sources or the most like the largest sample size. Like I would say, why aren't you pulling data from the National Crime Victimization Survey? Why are you pulling it from some random advocacy article?
Yeah. No, I know. It was just like that's the thing. Like he thought since he had that list of articles or whatever, you know, they have those like Google documents they share and they bring up like random articles and they all kind of spread them. That's why their videos are all the same. But it's yeah, it's just they're not proving what they think. And the other thing is, I wanted to bring back that tweet one more second because the other thing it said he called you like an anecdote Andy in the title, and it was like race realism. Like he sat through an hour and a half of race realism, and I was like, where is this even coming from? Like, what are you talking about?
He's such a buffoon that he didn't realize that I didn't even disagree that much with this point. He was like, did you know that there isn't like a perfect box that you can draw around different racial groups that distinguishes them from other groups? And I said, yes. Like, yeah, but there are genetic traits that we recognize in people, and that's what we call race. I understand it's not a perfect categorization system. So in reality, I was like stating a more accurate version of the position he was trying to bring up. And he's like race realism or whatever. Like when he was actually trying to call me, and people don't make this distinction because they're idiots, like a race determinist, which is a position that I completely argued against when I was, putting Chicago versus New
hmm
York. So he doesn't know anything. It's
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, the other part to that is, and this is where another thing he was doing was he would always say why. You know, he's like, why do you think that's happening? Why are these people getting arrested more? Why is this happening? And obviously, like what he was leading to, like he wanted you to say, oh, it's inherent. You know, like he said inherent a few times. Like you think it's like an inherent quality, like these people just commit crimes because they were born that way. But no one ever says that besides these bread tubers.
Right.
You know, they try to accuse us of this kind of stuff like, oh, we think that this race is just inherently this. Like, we think that this race is better, you're a supremacist, but it's like we never say that. Like they try to hint at it, and he kept hitting you with those whys, and I was like, dude, why does it even matter at a certain point? It's like we're just talking about facts. We're talking about this is what happens. These are the people arrested for this. This is why they got arrested. And there's no more why than that. You can't say, oh, well, this person got arrested for robbing a liquor store, and you're like, yeah, but why did they rob the liquor store? It's like, dude, who cares?
Well, we have to accept the premise before we can get into the why. They deny disproportionate crime rates and then ask you to explain why the thing that they're denying is happening when they're saying that it's happening. It's crazy.
Yeah, that makes it even worse for sure.
And he doesn't even pay attention. And when I go into like the differences in police tactics, and you can see I try to bring this up and I bring up specific experiments and different kind of he immediately tries to shift the conversation. So he doesn't even want to know why, because in his mind, the why is racism and they're being oppressed. That's why they're getting arrested for more crimes, and nothing else really matters.
Right.
He just wants you to say, oh, it's because of the color of their skin. But I'm like, no, obviously law enforcement strategy can have a significant impact on these areas. We've seen that multiple times, but he's like, oh, no, I can't get into that.
That's true. Yeah, it goes two ways. There's two bad assumptions. It's like they assume it's because of racism, and anything that there's a difference between black and white, it's if black has it worse, it's because of racism. And then the other thing is we think it's because of, like I said, it's that inherent stuff. They want to act like we are these race realist is what it is. It's race realist or race determinist, or however there's different angles to that. But it's like, yeah, none of us have ever said that stuff. Like I totally make sure to avoid it. Like I've never thought or said any of that, because it's like we're just dealing with the facts. We see that certain crimes are happening more in this city, and there's demographics to consider and location. It's just like we're not worried about that big long why that they're just trying to come up with to excuse the crimes.
Well, they don't want to know why. Like I am concerned with why, but I can't get to a why before you acknowledge that it's happening.
Yeah.
And I always make the New York Chicago comparison. I don't want to go over that again. But like the other thing that I thought was really funny was the condom portion of the debate. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, that was classic.
So I was saying that they have higher percentage of unmarried births, out of wedlock births is what they call it, and it's like 72%. So he was like, why? I'm like, well, they're probably not using condoms like more. Which, by the way, I look it up later. Turns out to be true. This idiot sends me an article saying that black people age 40 to 49 use condoms more than white people. In the very next sentence after it says that, it says this is because they're less likely to be married at this point. Now, if we're talking about out of wedlock births, like you have to logically assume, even if it's not stated, that this skews younger, right? We're talking about like teen pregnancy. So like that's the demographic you want to look at. So the 40 to 49, completely irrelevant. The other thing that he sends me, which is amazing, is that black gay men use condoms more, which is fantastic. I'm happier for them. That protects you from sexually transmitted diseases. But what the hell does that have to do with teen pregnancy? And I said that in the debate, and I was like, he's like, this has nothing to do with teen pregnancy. He's like, of course it does. I'm like, do you want me to explain biology to you? Are you insane? And like, that was like, to him, that was something that he could not get past that. But it's like the most obvious thing in the world. Of course,
I know.
Like two dudes have nothing to do with teen pregnancy. What are you talking about?
I know. It was insane. Like I remember that moment, and it reminded me of a couple moments, like you were saying, the buffoon stuff, where it was just like he would hit these walls, and he even said it like he couldn't wrap his head around it. Like there was moments he said that. Like another time that he pivoted was on the other topic was like the browning of America stuff. Like,
oh, he brought that up. That was fun.
He brought it up, but he didn't call it that. You used like the official, like whatever accepted term that's going around, but he was saying it like replacement or something. Yeah, and he couldn't believe that you thought that was true, but like I guess he was assuming like the conspiracy theory version, but you're just talking about the fact that I mean everyone knows that immigration has changed a lot over the last couple decades. It's like it's a numbers thing. It's like you can't deny it.
Well, he brought that up, and I just wanted him to explain the conspiracy theory because I wanted it on recording that him saying it.
I know.
So I was just asking him, like, well, I'm like, why are you calling it that? I'm like, isn't it like that? This is what the New York Times calls it. And then I pull up an NPR article, share it on screen, and I'm like, are you denying that this is happening? Do you think that NPR is an alt-right publication? Like, what are you trying to say?
I know it was the perfect. Yeah, I was thinking that that was a good response because it was like that was another time where he just couldn't handle it because he was like trying to get you to be racist, and then he's like denying facts, and then that was another time where he just turned the topic. He was just like, you know what? No, I can't wrap my head around this. I'm moving on.
Well, he was looking for clips. Like, that's what he was looking for. So he wanted to throw something random out there to get me to say something, which obviously he's not familiar enough with my content, so that he could have a clip. So, I just like dumbfounded him by asking him to explain it. I did that another time where he was like he was trying to get on a roll, like asking a bunch of questions, and he asked if I was a man of science, and I was like, no. And he's like, well, oh, wait, because he wasn't expecting me to say that. I
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I was like, oh no, I am. I just, threw off your momentum. So there's like a lot of like little techniques that I was using to like control the pace of the conversation and keep them off focus.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was great to watch, and I think that about wraps it up. The last thing I'll say is because someone commented this too. Like I think some of their followers might have made their way to the stream, which is fine. Welcome to the show. But the thing they said already right out the gate, they're like masks is slipping. What do you think about the mask is slipping?
Oh yeah, he was saying that to me.
He said that to your face. I
As
was
I was
like, Jesus.
as I was doing the phone call, and I was describing to him how your demographics don't necessarily determine crime. Like, I was making a literally a counter racist argument that if you had any level of intelligence, which I'm sure the people in his audience don't have, you could use that against people who are like race determinists when it comes to crime. He was like, "Oh, your mask is slipping now that the mask is coming off," and it's like they're so stupid.
I
It's like,
know.
it's unbelievable. Like, it's literally
It's
policy can impact this. Police practice can impact this.
yeah,
It's not a destiny based on, the demographics of your population. And this guy's like, "Oh, this is not the gut you think it is." Like, it's like
I
you're
know,
talking.
dude. It's so frustrating, and like I've seen it too. And the one that kills me, and I think this is what the mask is slipping comment. It's first of all, it's just played out and dumb and said where it doesn't really make sense. And then the other thing is, it's basically that secret racist argument. It's like you're a secret racist and you're hiding behind a mask. And then sometimes you might say something where it's slipping, but it's like, no, dude, that's not what's happening. No one's a secret racist here. We're just talking about stuff and issues and news, and we're going over facts. And sometimes we have opinions. Sometimes we might make a joke that's off color too. But it's like, dude, there's no mask slipping.
Yeah, well, he's not smart, so he just watches other regressives do these debates, and he's like, well, at 22 minutes in, they say the mask is slipping, so I have to say that too. Like, he's a carbon copy
Yeah, I know.
of these
I
other
know.
people.
Yeah, and I
Like,
think that's a
even
good time.
Vaush, and I'll give Vosh credit for this. When he was watching my video, and he's like, he's gonna do 1350, he's gonna do 1350. When he actually heard my comparison from Chicago to New York City, and you could see this in the video, he knew I wasn't making a racist argument. His audience didn't know because Vosh's audience is dumber than him, but he knew that, and he was actually shaming his audience for like celebrating at what they thought they heard. And he's like, no, he's actually saying something accurate that's the opposite of that. Like, what do you, well, not the opposite, but like that has nothing really, it was not germane to that.
Hmm.
And they're like, they don't realize it. That's Serfs. Like, he doesn't have this, he doesn't even raise up to the level of Vaush.
Yeah, and that says a lot for sure. That's the thing. Like, um, yeah, and actually, I'll admit that too. Like, without getting complimentary, like I did actually see a few clips where Bosch will like kind of take the other side, like you just said, like kind of like I don't even know if it's like admitting they're wrong here, but just kind of like, oh, this thing is true, and the audience needs to, stop being so like kind of polarizing, like because they have this audiences that are tending to just like defend their creator about everything and attack the other person about everything. But it's just we don't live in that kind of world. Like things are more nuanced than that. Like
Yeah.
people you hate can be right about something, like the people you like can be super wrong sometimes too.
Yeah, that's why, all everyone's audience to a certain extent is like that. They're a self-curated group of people that are predisposed to agree with you. That's why every now and again I'll make a video where I'll just spend time attacking my audience, just to keep them on their toes, challenge them on
Yeah.
a position or something like that. But yeah, that does happen. You tend to get people that agree with you, and people that view you as smarter than them, typically because they're not, as smart. That's what you see in the like Vaush section, like,
Right.
or not even in the Surf section, even more, because Surf, I think, is a audience member of Vaush, so he's in that dumber audience category, and then he starts his own thing and he recruits even dumber people with him.
Yeah, I know.
Like a
And I
train of
think that's a good time to bring up the last subject. And we're getting close to the end of the stream. We're past an hour, so we'll wrap up soon. I think this last guy, Xander, just needs a few minutes to go over stuff because I think it actually ties in, like you just said. You could go down the line here, and I think this character is definitely like the step below Serfs. Like he's like, Vaush copied Destiny, and then Serfs copied Vaush, and then Xander's kind of like the third or fourth in line. And it shows. And the other thing it shows is with this guy is he's very young, like he's naive, he doesn't have any world experience. And I want to get into it because he actually admits all of this. We have a Twitter post that came up a couple days ago, but let me preface it first because it's going to sound a little harsh because I feel like I disagree with a lot of it, and he's trying to post this like sad post on Twitter, like saying, "Oh, my living situation is really bad." He's complaining about his parents and stuff, and it sounds really childish to me already. But before we get into it, I just want to note that like I'm not trying to be like negative and like bash these guys' personal stuff. Like I'm not
Right.
trying to do that initially, but they have done this to us. They've brought the fight to our doorstep. Like they've called us out on similar things. Like for example, I just saw this guy made a video about me like last week, and I couldn't watch it all because it's like an hour. They're like really long and boring. And the first, I got through a couple of minutes, and all he does in the beginning is like ad hominem, and he goes after my channel, and he like makes fun of my thumbnails, and then he also says like, "Oh, look, he's not getting views anymore." Like, who knows? He's probably gonna get banned. All these people getting banned recently, like he's probably gonna get banned soon, and he's just like really going after me like hard, like kind of like personal, like going after your livelihood, like hoping that you get kicked off and all this stuff. And so with that said, like I don't have a lot of sympathy, and I think
And it's also, he put this out publicly. And are you
yeah.
going to read some of the statement? Because I've read it already, and I need to take like 1 minute anyway. So if you're going to read it, that's perfect.
Yeah, go ahead, take a break. I'll read through the beginning and we'll come back. But basically, yeah, he's got this statement, so it's public. We're not like sneaking up on anything. We're not revealing anything that he hasn't posted. So until actual Justice Warrior gets back, let's go ahead and check this out. It says Xander, he said he avoided talking about his living situation and the complications with moving. It's time to tell you for my own sanity. So he needs to like get this out there. He's all about like sharing this with his fans. Like these guys are like really, really close to their fans. Like it's like their family. They're like, they don't have a lot of social interactions. They don't have lives. Like this guy's only 20 years old. And you're gonna see just how like he's not even like your average 20-year-old. Like this is sounding like it's coming from like someone who's like a teenager, like in high school. Like he doesn't have any kinds of like self, he doesn't blame himself for anything. He basically blames his parents. Here, let's go ahead and read first, and then we'll talk. I feel like I need like piano music in the background, like sad music. Anyway, I didn't want to talk about this until I was out of my shitty living situation, but due to how badly my moving efforts have gone and how much stress keeping it a secret has caused me, I decided it's time to I told you all anyway. If you watch me frequently, you may have heard me talk about my toxic and abusive relationship with my parents. How, especially, my mom's behavior caused me a lot of trauma as a kid and teenager and basically shoved me down the alt-right rabbit hole. Oh, the alt-right rabbit hole. Watch out, guys. That stuff's evil. His parents made him do it, though, so it's not his fault. Right after New Year's of 2018, my relationship with my parents, again, who has a relationship with their parents? I don't know why you would say it like that twice. Devolved to the point of constant fights and escalated to violence very often. Eventually, my parents kicked me out and sent me to live with my uncle for a year. That is where I spent all of 2018. Early in 2019, let's see here, take off my camera. I got a phone call from my stepdad telling me I had to pack my stuff up and stay with them for a few weeks because my mom's dog died. She was very depressed and he had to leave for work all day and needed someone to cheer her up. So I don't know. That doesn't really make sense. He's cheering her up and I thought they hated each other or something. He was hesitant to move back in with my parents after a year away. I suppose I forgot how bad they were. However, a couple weeks turned into a month and now he can't. He wants to move back to his uncle. Sean, you're there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm getting through like the first page. Dude, it's 4 pages. This is brutal. Like, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it's too personal. Like, why are you posting all this publicly? Like, we don't need to know that you're like disavowing your parents or something like that. It's like really.
Seriously. It's really cringy, like personal. I don't get why, like he said, for his own sanity, like he felt the need to share this with everyone. And I'm just like, weird, dude. Like, this is the guy who was like calling me, like saying I'm a failure, or like, oh, I hope your channel gets deleted. He's like, he acts like he's such a big shot. And then now he's like, oh, my parents hurt me. Like, oh, I can't get away from my parents. It's like, dude, move out. How hard is it to move out of your parents' house? I mean, it's not easy, but I don't get this whole thing, like this whole crybaby story.
And it's always like they're so weaselly because they want to be like that kid who's like, I went down the alt-right rabbit hole, and then I was rescued by the far left. But if you ask them like what they actually believe, they'll never say that they were like actual extremists or anything like that, because that's really bad, whether you believed it then or and like recovered now or not.
Yeah.
So they completely, that's complete nonsense. The whole, oh, they were pushing me this way. It's like these are the same people that will criticize, people moving slightly to the right on issues or not aligning with progressives on 100% of things. It's crazy.
I know, and that's a great point too, because I almost look past that with all this other stuff. Like I'm all focused on the fact I'm like 20 years old, still living with his parents. Later on, we're gonna learn he can't drive a car. Like he has no like life skills. Like he never could get a job. Like he's got nothing going on. And I'm not saying that to try to like bully or like put him down, but it's just like, do we really want to listen to someone like this when we're talking about like police brutality or like changing the government or who to vote for in the presidential election? It's like, dude, I mean, you could vote when you're 18, but this kid sounds like he's like 14.
Yeah, it's not necessarily bullying to say that it's a bad idea to make people public figures before they've had any real life experience. Like I
Yeah.
would probably be a significantly worse person, like have a bigger ego, if like my channel got to where it was when I was 20. First of all, if I was able to get to where I am now when I was 20, but at that point in YouTube, when the algorithm was actually working with creators that put in work, then my channel would be significantly like bigger than it is now.
Hmm.
But like that wouldn't be good for me at a young age. I would have no life experience. Like a lot of
Yeah.
these people, the reason they get into these scandals, surrounding women, it's not just the male feminist thing. It's also that these people were nerds that never learned how to talk to women, and then they became famous, and women came to them. So then
Yeah.
they act all awkward, but on a grand scale. So it's not bullying whatsoever to say, like, dude, hey, don't put all this personal stuff out in the public. You open yourself up to criticism. Sure, you'll get sympathy points, but it's cringy as hell and you shouldn't do it. B, like, don't think you know everything when you're a Florida resident and you can't drive. Like, people in Florida learn to drive when they're like 14, 15,
I
16.
know. That's what I was gonna say. Like, I actually came up in Florida. I learned to drive when I was 15. Like, I got my license like right when I turned 16, like as soon as I could. On top of that, I mean, I don't want to draw a direct comparison, but I mean, this was common for people my age too. Like, I moved out when I was 18. I went to college for 4 years. Like, by the time I was this guy's age, I was halfway through college. I was learning how to edit video I took like whatever acting classes and stuff too, like trying to get skills for this kind of job, for a job in, entertainment production, whatever it may be. I wasn't zeroed in on YouTube back then. I had a YouTube channel, but that's besides the point. I mean, I'm just using my own experience because I'm just like, damn, this kid's 20 and he hasn't even moved out. He can't even learn how to drive. And the worst part is he blames his parents for everything. And then the
His
other thing,
parents probably spoiled him.
I know, and he's okay. Here's the other thing, and we don't really need to read through it all. I remember, I think the main points, but the other thing that's coming up is, yeah, he says he's stuck at his parents, and then he kind of like indirectly reveals that they're rich because first he says he's in a gated community and he can't get out because of the gated community and security guards, like whatever that means. I mean, walk out the front gate, dude. Like it's not impossible. Put your computer in a whatever, a backpack or something and walk out of there. I mean, it's not like it's ridiculous. And then the other thing that's revealing is he said later at one point he like moved in within he said he moved to a roommate's house to his audience, but he actually just moved to his parents' guest room. So like obviously they have like a big house with a whole other wing or room or something. I don't know if it was a guest house. I think it might have just been an extra room or something. But basically he admits to lying. He says he never moved to like Miami or something. Like he had this whole lie on his show that he told everyone.
And it's fine to obscure your location to a certain extent, but it's like he's lying. He's doing the Mazza thing where he's pretending he's pleading poverty when his parents are wealthy. In Mazza's case, they were extraordinarily wealthy, but
yeah, we don't know. I mean, obviously, we know they're well off. Like, no one that has a house in a gated community is broke. Like, I mean, even the most low rent gated communities are like super swanky. And the other thing is, yeah, it's like he moved to this guest room, and then he also admits to lying and like lying to his audience and putting on this front for like months and months that he was in another place. And like you said, like people obscure their locations all the time. Like I think we do that. I think anyone doesn't want their address out there, but to go that far, it just shows like this kind of behavior of a liar. And then also it's like, what else is he lying about? Is this thing true? Is all this stuff true? Like, do we really think his parents are as bad as he claims? Like, because I'm starting to lean towards maybe his parents see this guy streaming on YouTube all the time, looking like a loser, never have any friends, and they're like, dude, they're like they're just like trying to help him.
yeah.
And okay, I think that about wraps that part up.
And to that point, again, if you're in a tough situation, obviously, I'm not gonna attack you personally. I try to avoid the personal attacks on the channel, but like, don't put this out publicly, and don't plead poverty when you're moving to like the guest room, which might have been like you got the bigger room in the house.
Yeah, and I think that's another point. I don't know if you heard this, or I think you're going towards it because he has pled poverty and like he's gotten a lot of donations. Like there was one point like he asked his audience to buy him an air conditioner or something for some reason, and it was like when he pretended he was at another place, another living place, but he's really at his parents'. And apparently he denied it and said he still bought the air conditioner, but whatever it may be, like it's just like he's using that situation to get money and like try to get sympathy, and that's what this post proves. And this isn't the first time actually. Like the other thing worth mentioning that's related is this Xander guy. At one point, he used to be called Pig Puncher. He had a different name, so that's actually another similarity between like a Vaush. Like they changed their names.
Well, I would question the air conditioner thing just because if you know anything about Florida, especially gated communities in Florida, those houses have central AC typically.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, let's not brush over that because I was thinking that in my head too. I'm like, did he buy like a little indoor air conditioner? I guess maybe, but it's like it's a stretch, dude. Like, yeah, every house in Florida has central air.
Like almost everyone, but in gated communities, like that goes up, by percentages. So like, is he buying a window unit? He's not a New Yorker. There's no way.
Yeah, I know. I was wondering that too. That's totally worth questioning, and I would wonder if he has any pictures or proof of that air conditioning purchase because,
Proof
like
of
we said,
purchase. Demand it.
yeah, we should put that out there. Anyone in the comments wants to ask for that. But to the other point, yeah, he eventually at one point changed his name, which is something that Vaush also did, like we talked about, which is just another weird thing. Like they want to like think it's part of like they rebrand once in a while or like just kind of like revamp. and whatever. I mean, that happens with other channels too. It's not totally unheard of. But the point is, there was one point, okay, so he changed his name and then he went through this drama where he said anyone that mentions his old name is like dead naming him. So he tried to say they were dead naming him, which I actually didn't know all this detail. Like I'm not deep in like the trans culture, but like apparently if you use a trans person's like original name, it's a dead name and it's like really offensive and like
Right.
triggering.
But
And
that's not a YouTube thing though. That doesn't apply to your YouTube
I
name.
know, I know, and the reason this is bringing this up is first of all, obviously it's like he's playing victim. He's trying to act like, oh, that hurts me. You said pig puncher. I'm Xander now. I'm Xander, and like both of his names are dumb, by the way. But the point is, it's like, you know, he's trying to play victim. He's like, oh, you dead named me. Like that hurts my feelings. Oh my God, you're triggering me when you say pig puncher. And it's like, dude, you're not suffering the same as these trans people. Like dead name is a term for their system. And I mean, I'm not trying to go full blown defending that either. Like whichever, you
Well,
know,
it's
I
like
don't think
you can legally change your name, and if you legally change your name and somebody calls you, like, remove the trans thing from it. If you
yeah.
legally change your name and people call you by your former name to piss you off, then that's rude. But that's not
Yeah,
the
for
same as
sure. That's
YouTube.
the point. Yeah, that's the best point because it's like it doesn't even matter that thing. It's just kind of comes from that community because they have that uh history of changing their name and that kind of stuff. So, but that the point is that came up and that actually became a drama I think within his own community because you know how pro alphabet they are and how they are really sensitive about that stuff. So, I just brought it up to point out another instance where they're playing victim and to also just point out the fact that, you know, these guys have so many similarities. Breadtube has a lot of bad things happening. Like we're not just talking about these debates. We have this point about this last character, Xander, who had this whole drama with his parents. He apparently can't move out. And then, you know, we have the dramas we talked about before. Vaush had to change his name. You know, he had these dramas, had very controversial clips. I think Serfs is somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't actually know that much lore about him, but I think his worst thing is just that he's dumb. He's just really bad. And like you said, like just buffoon is the perfect word for it because he's just like he's such a goober and he has like the widest eyes. I want to call him like bug eyes because he's just like always like
Oh, he's discount Brendan Fraser.
yeah, discount Brendan Fraser. And then we got I think Vaush I would call ponytail. Ponytail, discount Fraser, and well, I don't know, maybe call Xander the victim, just victim, super victim or something like that, like virtue signaler. But yeah, I think that about wraps things up. I think we're past time. We got all the points out there. Was there anything else today? Did we get through all the stuff that you were wanting to talk about?
I think we got through everything.
Okay, cool, cool. Good stream then. I really appreciate it. I see we got a lot of people in the audience, about 100 people still. So thank you guys for watching. Mestizo, I made a whatever, I gave you a hammer or a wrench administrator. So welcome to the administration team. Jay, thanks for watching. Tim, VV Street is in the house. So is Mo Bamba. You guys are great. Thanks for the likes, by the way. I appreciate a couple extra people showing up for the AJW stream. Let me, of course, plug your channel, Sean. You have great videos every week. He covers some similar stuff, some different stuff. Check him out. Actual Justice Warrior on YouTube. I got your link at the top of the description too, if anyone's looking for that. Before we go, thanks for coming on. What's your plans going on? What's like your next video? Do you have anything in the works?
I have ideas, but nothing planned since I don't script. So you
Okay,
know,
but you had one come out today, right?
yeah, I had the Hong Kong one out today.
Okay, awesome. Hong Kong story. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, we have to rescue Lauren Chen from Canada. That's also
Yeah, we should get her too. We're like drafting. We're like, all right, we want to pick up these players. Like, yeah, I know where you're going with that though too, because like I think I saw you comment about it. Like Hong Kong people love America. Like we should be supporting them. Like they have our flags up. Like they're more patriotic than a lot of the immigrants we have here.
yeah, and it's like in the UK they said that they'll possibly grant citizenship to 3 million people. There's no way 3 million people from Hong Kong are going to the UK. Like people freak out like you're trying to import the whole population. It's like you just want to give the option because you want like a lot of these talented people to come.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
it's not going to be millions. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just like, they deserve it. They want the same things. They appreciate, our system, freedom, a lot of the same values. They speak English. There's a lot of good similarities there. So definitely check that out, guys. Check out his Hong Kong video. Check out new videos on this channel each day. The main channel, NoBS, of course. We're popping out videos as much as we can. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Later.